It is not just today that the name Somalia has become synonymous with extreme poverty and violence. Images of devastating famine, civil wars, and modern pirates shock the world and seem difficult to believe. Entire families struggle to survive without food, clean water, or safety, trapped in absolutely inhumane conditions. But today, Bello Mundo invites you to face this reality that few have the courage to explore. Let's travel to Somalia, a country in the Horn of Africa known as one of the poorest and most dangerous on the planet. What follows will challenge all your concepts of misery, resistance, and humanity. Number 1. Location and geographical data. Somalia is located in the eastern corner of Africa, in a region called the Horn of Africa. On one side are Ethiopia, Djibouti, and Kenya. On the other, the Indian Ocean and the Gulf of Aden. And right at the tip is the easternmost point of the entire African continent. The territory is large, covering more than 240,000 square miles. But what really stands out is the coastline. It stretches for more than 2,900 miles, the longest coastline on the African continent. In any other country, this could mean tourism, resorts, and diving. But here, it's a different story. Geography does not make things easy. The climate is hot, dry, and unpredictable. Most of the country is covered by savannas and deserts. Rain is rare, and when it comes, it passes quickly. Only 2 rivers flow year-round, the Juba and the Shebel. The rest are dry riverbeds, waiting for water that may take years to return. Even so, life goes on. This scenario of constant drought and harsh land helps to understand a lot about what comes next. Somalia's strategic position, coupled with its hostile geography, has shaped centuries of tension, foreign interference, and conflict, and the country's history shows exactly how it all began. Number 2. History. Somalia's history has never been peaceful. For centuries, the territory was a trade route, a target for invasions, and a stage for disputes. At the end of the 19th century, with the partition of Africa, Europeans divided everything without asking anyone. The British took the north. The Italians took the south. 2 colonies, 2 different worlds, forcibly stitched together. Independence came in 1960. So did hope. For a while, it seemed that the country would find its way. But it did not last. In 1969, a military coup brought General Siad Barre to power. He promised modernization. He delivered dictatorship. He centralized everything, stifled opponents, and bet on an authoritarian socialism that isolated Somalia from the world. In 1991, the regime fell. And with it, the entire country fell. The state simply ceased to exist. Without government, without laws, without anything. Each region came to be controlled by a clan, a militia, and a warlord. The capital became a war zone. The United States tried to intervene. It went wrong. Soldiers died in the streets of Mogadishu. The tragedy was so great that it ended up becoming a movie. Black Hawk Down, released in 2001, told the world what happened when 2 American helicopters were shot down in the heart of the chaos. Since then, Somalia has been trying to rebuild itself. Some areas have created their own governments. Others have fallen into the hands of radical groups, such as Al-Shabaab. The central government only controls parts of the country. And in the midst of all this chaos are the people. People who were born without knowing what it is to live in peace. It is about them that we now speak. Number 3. The Somali people. Somalia may be a country divided into militias and war zones, but its people, curiously, are one of the most homogeneous on the African continent. Almost everyone speaks the same language, Somali. Most also belong to the same ethnic group and follow the same faith. In theory, this should make things easier, but in practice, it's not quite like that, because what really rules in Somalia are the clans. Society is organized into large family lineages that function almost like small parallel governments. Each clan has its leaders, its rules, its alliances, and it was precisely this logic, loyalty to blood over nation, that prevented the country from rebuilding itself when everything collapsed. Today, there are an estimated 18 million Somalis, but that number is full of asterisks. The last real census was in 1975, and to this day, a large part of the population lives on the move, crossing rural areas with their herds, as they have always done. More than half of Somalis lead a nomadic or semi-nomadic life. They raise goats, sheep, and cattle, but the most valuable animal of all is the camel. Amidst the cracked ground, scarce vegetation, and extreme heat, camels provide everything: milk, meat, transportation, and even status. Owning a camel is often the difference between survival and collapse. It is no coincidence that Somalia has the second largest camel herd in the world. The majority of the population is young. The average age is less than 20. However, living that long is rare. Life expectancy is only 56 years, a large youth population marked by early loss and the harshness of life. That's what we're going to see now. Number 4. Extreme poverty and inequality. According to the World Bank, 7 out of 10 Somalis live on less than $1.90 a day, which constitutes extreme poverty by international standards. The situation is even more critical in rural areas and conflict-affected zones. There, access to basic items such as food, clean water, clothing, or decent shelter is simply non-existent for many people. Entire families live in makeshift tents made of canvas and pieces of fabric exposed to intense heat and dust storms. Much of the population depends on humanitarian aid to survive. But supply convoys do not always reach their destination, either because of conflict or because some areas are controlled by militias. When aid fails, people go hungry and often die as a result. In urban centers, inequality is glaring. In Mogadishu, for example, you can find a small market with imported goods, and across the street, a camp of internally displaced persons living in unsanitary conditions, without water or toilets. The country's already fragile economy has been dismantled over decades of war. Today, much of the money in circulation comes from remittances sent by Somalis who fled and live abroad. Without this, the collapse would be even greater. But poverty in Somalia goes beyond a lack of money. It is structural poverty affecting health, education, and hope for the future itself. Number 5. Poor health and humanitarian crises. Being sick in Somalia means facing abandonment. The war destroyed most hospitals, clinics, and health centers. Outside the capital, finding medical care is almost a miracle. And even in Mogadishu, hospitals are crowded, without medicine, without doctors, and often without security. Those who save lives there are mostly foreign NGOs. The result is clear in the numbers. Nearly 1 in 7 children dies before reaching the age of 5. Diseases such as measles, diarrhea, and malaria, which are easily treatable elsewhere, can be fatal there. In 2017 alone, a cholera outbreak infected 45,000 people and killed more than 700 in just a few months, all because of a lack of clean water and rapid medical care. Life expectancy is extremely low, around 56 years, and for women, the risk is even greater. The number of deaths during childbirth is frightening, as most Somali women do not have access to prenatal care or hospitals. Many become pregnant while still teenagers, already weakened by hunger, anemia, and local practices that leave permanent scars on the body. Only half of the population has access to clean water, and more than a quarter still relieve themselves outdoors. No bathrooms, no sewage, no dignity. In several regions, vaccination campaigns have to negotiate with extremist groups to gain entry. Number 6. Lack of water and basic sanitation. Another critical issue is the lack of clean water and sanitation. For more than half of Somalis, this is the reality. In many regions, there are no taps, no pipes, and no deep wells. What does exist are shallow springs, muddy rivers, and long walks under the scorching sun just to get a bucket of water. And when they get there, the water is not always drinkable. With climate change, everything has gotten even worse. The rains have disappeared, droughts last longer, and even the few remaining rivers have begun to disappear. Today, only about 52% of the population has access to any reliable water supply. The rest have to improvise, and often end up drinking contaminated water. The consequences are evident in the numbers. Diseases such as cholera, hepatitis, and intestinal infections are common, especially among children already weakened by malnutrition. Dirty water makes people sick, and the lack of medical care makes it worse. And sanitation? Almost non-existent. About 28% of the population still relieves themselves outdoors because there are no toilets. In camps and cities, latrines are communal, used by dozens of families. When they fill up, the sewage goes straight into the ground or the nearest river. It is a constant struggle against thirst, dirt, and indifference. Number 7. Education. If drinking clean water is already difficult, imagine going to school. Here, studying is a rare privilege. The country has one of the worst education systems in the world, a direct reflection of decades of war, extreme poverty, and the absence of a functioning government. Most schools were destroyed during the conflicts or simply abandoned. Today, many operate in makeshift structures without desks, books, and sometimes without teachers. It is estimated that more than half of Somali children do not attend any educational institution. Among girls, the number is even more alarming. The situation is especially critical in areas controlled by extremist groups which prohibit any form of modern education. In these regions, the only teachings allowed are religious, often with rigid interpretations and no room for science, math, or literature. Even in cities, the quality of education is extremely low. There is a lack of basic materials, trained professionals, and any kind of infrastructure. Some families even try to send their children to private schools run by NGOs, but places are few and demand is huge. The literacy rate is around 37%, one of the lowest in Africa, a future compromised before it even begins. Number 8. Drought, hunger, and climate change. As if war were not enough, the nation still faces a silent and devastating enemy: drought. And not just any drought. These are increasingly long, frequent, and unpredictable periods of drought, exacerbated by climate change. The result is a brutal cycle that transforms vast regions into cracked earth, without pasture, without crops, without water. Over the past few decades, Somalia has faced several historic famines. The one in 1992 killed hundreds of thousands. In 2011, another 260,000 people died, half of them young children. In 2017, more than 6 million Somalis needed urgent help to avoid starvation. And in 2022, the country experienced its worst drought in 40 years. It is estimated that more than 40,000 people died that year from lack of food and water. Nomadic herding, which sustained millions, is collapsing. Entire families lose their herds, walk for days to refugee camps, and become dependent on donations. Today, nearly 3 million Somalis are displaced within their own country. As if that weren't enough, in some years, the rains return with a vengeance, causing flash floods that further affect the vulnerable. It is a cruel imbalance. When there is not enough, there is too much, and it always falls on the poorest. Number 9. Security, violence, and armed groups. Somalia is one of the few countries in the world where leaving home can mean putting your life at risk. With no structured armed forces or police presence throughout the country, local militias, armed gangs, and one of the most active radical groups in the region are in charge. This group, which emerged in the 2000s, wields strong influence in the center and south of the country. In many regions, they impose themselves as the local authority, collecting taxes, enforcing strict rules, and prohibiting any behavior they consider outside the religious norms they uphold. For women, for example, it is mandatory to cover their faces. For everyone, any deviation can mean severe punishment. The result is a constant climate of tension, especially in the capital, Mogadishu. Explosions in markets, violent actions against public buildings, and urban armed conflicts are part of everyday life. One of the most shocking episodes occurred in 2017, when a loaded truck exploded in a busy area of the city, killing hundreds of people. Outside the capital, the roads are dangerous. Illegal checkpoints, ambushes, and assaults make any trip difficult. In cities, common crime is also frightening. Kidnappings, robberies, and disputes over basic resources have become routine. Since 2007, troops from African countries have been operating in the territory to try to ensure some control. But without this support, the government would hardly be able to hold on. For ordinary citizens, security depends on their clan, their community, or often their own luck. And it is in this scenario of total absence of authority that another phenomenon has gained international fame: Somali pirates. Number 10. Somali pirates. When you hear the word pirate, you might think of three-cornered hats, eye patches, and barrels of rum. But in recent years, the coast of Somalia has revealed that modern piracy is anything but romantic. During the height of the state's collapse between 2005 and 2012, armed groups began attacking commercial ships in the waters near the Horn of Africa. And it wasn't fiction. There were ship hijackings, demands for million-dollar ransoms, and real threats to the safety of international shipping lanes. With no functioning government, the coast became a no-man's land. Former Somali fishermen, hurt by illegal fishing by foreign vessels, decided to fight back. Others saw an opportunity to make money amid the chaos. Their methods were daring. Using small, fast boats, they would approach giant cargo ships, use ropes and hooks to climb aboard, and take control of the vessel. The goal was always the same: money. They held the crew hostage, safe, and contacted the ship's owners or governments demanding ransoms. In many cases, the amounts paid exceeded $1 million. The money was sometimes thrown from helicopters onto the deck. It was $1 million business in one of the poorest countries in the world. Some cases made international headlines, such as the hijacking of the Maersk, Alabama in 2009, which inspired the film Captain Phillips, starring Tom Hanks. In another episode, pirates captured a supertanker with cargo valued at $100 million. This put Somalia on the world's radar. Somali piracy was, in the end, an extreme symptom of social collapse. And for many young Somalis with no jobs, no future, and no alternatives, that was exactly what was left. And that's all for today. I think now you can understand what life is really like in one of the poorest countries in Africa. A place where the climate, hunger, lack of water, conflicts, and absence of government create a scenario that few people can imagine. Now tell us, what surprised you the most? Take advantage and subscribe to Bello Mundo, because every week there is a new video with powerful stories that are curious and often invisible to the eyes of most people. See you next time.